go over a couple things quick. First of all, my name is Sam. I'm the owner of Blue House Books, so thank you guys all so much for being here. That's the book skirt. I had to be on theme. So yes, thank you all so much for being here. So this is definitely our most popular panel of the day, I think. So I just wanted to go over a couple things so we can run it nice and fast and smooth. So first of all, we're going to start with introductions, and then they'll kind of have a conversation up here about romance books and things like that. I do want to give a content warning. I did tell the authors that have some adult content, if you know what I mean, that they don't necessarily have to hold back in this discussion. So if there's anyone who is sensitive to adult things or gore, this might not be the one for you, and that's okay. So just be aware, and we're all adults here, or almost adults, so it should be all good. So after we do the discussion, we're going to move on to questions, but since it's such a large group, we're going to do it a little differently. On the screen here, you'll see a phone number. It's over here as well. You're going to text your questions there. Text your question and your name, and then I'm going to go through the questions just to keep it speedy. If I read out your question, feel free to raise your hand and be like, hey, that was me. But I just want to make sure we don't go too far over on time since we have such a packed, really great day. And then if you're doing the meet and greet with Bryn afterward, we're going to have someone who's going to have a sign and everything ready to go. So we're going to move from this room to her signing line. And then we're actually wrapping the signing line around all the other authors. So you'll have plenty of time to see everyone else. Check out all the yeah, absolutely. 100%. So yeah, you'll have time to see everything. And basically how it's going to go is as long as you're in the signing line by 3, you will get your book signed and you'll have a chance to say hi one-on-one. So don't feel pressured like you have to rush into the line. We have plenty of time today. Check out the other authors. My bookmobile is outside. Check that out. It's really cute and fun. There are vendors in the lobby. If you didn't see them already, you can get some bookish merch. There's some snacks outside, a mocktail bar, all kinds of fun things. By the way, there's a couple themed mocktails, so you guys gotta check them out. All right, I think that was everything. So without further ado, I'm going to let our moderator, Melanie, take it away.
All right. Hello. Are we on? Are we good? Can you hear me? Hear me okay? Yeah. Great. So welcome everyone to the romance panel, 10 Things I Love About Love. Thank you so much to Sam for organizing all of this. Appreciate it. We're going to start with a little game to test your romance knowledge, something fun. So have you ever heard of the game Password, where there's a phrase that we have to get you to guess? We can't say the word in order to get you to guess, but we got to get it to we'll see. So if I were to pick a romance trope and I have to explain it to you without using the actual word, so I'll keep it easy because so if I said stuck together. So I'm going to pass this down the line to the next person, and you get this one, and then so forth and so on. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, we're totally pretending, but everyone thinks we're really going out.
Hey. I don't know if that's very loud. We're doing this, but just because it works out that way. There you go. All right, we started out as buddies, but now not so much.
That was easy. See, you guys know this. You're all good. So we're in the right place. So, all right, I have to pull up my notes now. So I'm going to do a quick introduction here of our panel. Let everyone know who's here with us. And I'm going to let you know who they are, and then I want you to tell us if you had a childhood nickname. As you know, because speaking of nicknames, as we know, Bryn Weaver's book, Butcher and Blackbird, we definitely have a discussion of nicknames. So I would like to know if you have a childhood nickname. So starting out over here on this side, we have Bryn Weaver, who is USA Today bestselling author and TikTok sensation, with work sold worldwide in over 15 languages to date. Bryn Weaver has traveled the world, taken in more stray animals than her husband would probably prefer, and nurtured her love for dark comedies, horror, and romance in both literature and film. During all her adventures, the constant thread of Bryn's life has been writing. With 8 published works and counting, Bryn has made her mark in the literary world by blending irreverent dark comedy, swoon-worthy romance, and riveting suspense to create genre-breaking, addictive stories for readers to escape into. So Bryn, tell us, childhood nickname?
This is such a weird nickname. Miss Muppet.
Actually,
I don't know why.
is that from the nursery rhyme?
I think so. Yeah, it was my grandmother. This is weird. Like, I wonder if I should just hold it, actually. Yeah, my grandmother called me Miss Muppet out of nowhere. I guess it was that nursery rhyme, probably.
I like it because it kind of fits you now, like the spider that sat down beside her.
Exactly. Hey.
I like that. And next to Bryn, we have Becca. Can you say that?
Grishow.
Thank you, Becca Grishow. I should have asked first, but I didn't. So Becca Grishow is a freelance marketing consultant, content creator, and ghostwriter of over 24 books, including multiple best-selling romances. Ooh, secret. Her work has been featured on Insider, NPR, and on popular podcasts like Celebrity Memoir Book Club. She is best known for her TikTok, where her storytelling content and writing advice has garnered over 127,000 followers and millions of quarterly views. My goodness. All right, so tell us about a childhood nickname.
So when I was little, I was Becca Boo was like the default, but I really did think that was my full name. So there is video of me saying, "What's your first name? Becca. What's your last name? Grishow. What's your middle name? Boo." And they're like trying to teach me my middle name and didn't stick.
Well, now we're all going to call you Becca Boo.
And I would love that, honestly.
And then next to Becca, we have Carla. And Carla writes contemporary romance with a dollop of humor. And Carla Luna, writes contemporary romance with a dollop of humor and a pinch of spice. A former archaeologist, which I think is so cool. She still dreams of traveling to far-off places and channels that wanderlust into settings of her stories. Her books have been called escape reads, ideal for perusing during a beachside vacation, a long flight, or relaxing at the lake, right here in Kenosha. She spends her time reading, baking, and taking long walks while listening to pop culture podcasts. Carla is of Mexican-American descent with roots in Los Angeles and Vancouver Island. Your new series is set on Vancouver Island, yeah. But she currently resides in Cedarburg, Wisconsin with her family and her feisty Siberian cat. So, childhood nickname.
So I didn't have a nickname, but I was just saying earlier that Carla Luna is my maiden name, and I got teased a lot. I was called Looney Tunes, Lunatic, Looney Bin, because you know how middle school is, and I hated my name, and my dad was like, one day you will thank me for that. And thank you, Dad.
It does make a great author name.
It's a
It
great
flows
author
so
name, but
nicely.
I got teased a lot.
Yes. And I'm Melanie Johnson. I write contemporary romance and rom-coms, and a nickname I had as a kid is that only my mom still uses is Mouse. So I don't know if it was because of how I scurried around on the ground or because of how I nibbled things and left them happy or what. So let's get into it. Let's talk some romance. I like to start, this is a favorite question of mine, with the origin story. I'd like to start by learning about what the book was that blooded you as a romance author, like the romance novel you read that stuck with you and somehow you knew you loved the genre, that's what you wanted to read, and also probably that's what you'd I'm going to write one of these one day. So Carla, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I don't actually write gothic romance, but Victoria Holt was it for me. And if you've ever read her, all of it's like windswept moors, governesses, chateaus, women with candelabras, or candle holders walking down a dark alley. So I loved her books, and also Kathleen E. Woodiwiss, if you've ever read any of hers, The Wolf and the Dove, I believe is a Viking one. Love that. So those were where I got my start.
Okay.
So I have kind of a bad answer, to be honest, and that is that I had never read a romance novel until I was hired to write one. And so I can't tell you what the first romance novel I read was because it was the client's romance novel. And I actually started writing romance because of what I didn't like about the work that I was writing. Ghostwriting is a weird job where you can't follow all your instincts and you are writing a story that's true to a different author, not true to you. And yeah, there were just some projects I worked on that I didn't like, that weren't what I wanted to see in romance, so I started writing my own.
That makes sense. Yeah, because it's kind of like, I know if you've ever read a book and the ending happens, and you're like, well, it's like how fan fiction often starts. Like, I'm going to write this the way I want to see it. So I kind of like that. Britt?
Yeah, there were a few. I think I turned it down now. I was like, what am I going? It was like really loud. There were a few. Probably Stephanie Fournay has a few novels out. So she's like hybrid published. She's done some on her own. That means like she self-published them, and then she's had a smaller independent publisher as well. So there are a few of her books, and also Abby Jimenez. Who's just fantastic and a lovely person. So I've read, I think I was starting to read some of those and thinking more about, okay, I like to write, I could do that too. I really like romance, so yeah.
Neat. I like that, yeah. It was Savage Thunder for me, Joanna Lindsay. Very, very, very not politically correct, but also lots of fun. We already issued the warning. There was a bonkers sex scene on the back of a horse that I
As a horse owner, I don't know how that works. I don't know.
Does not work in
Doesn't work here.
It's, an
Don't recommend.
I was babysitting. I was like 11 or 12 at the time. This was back in the day when you could babysit at that age. This was sitting on like the table. The kids went to bed. I was like, and that was it for me. That was it. So, Savage Thunder, I highly. It's one of those old school romance covers where he's like buck naked and like
On a horse.
I think I remember that cover.
So, Cliff Notes version, we kind of leaned into that a little bit already about how you got started writing romance. So we kind of talked about how you were inspired to write romance, but like very brief kind of like, this is, I wanted to do it, but how you are actually now doing it. So Becca, we'll start with you because you said it was kind of the ghostwriting first and then that segued into it. So.
Yeah, so I wrote, I think, maybe 15 or 16 romance novels before I decided I was going to write my own. And I started working on kind of like a romance fiction podcast that I did early on, and did 2 novellas that way that I co-wrote with other ghostwriters, other romance ghostwriters that I knew who were similarly a little bit unhappy with the books that they were writing.
I'm so fascinated by this secret world.
Yeah, it is a very cool and very weird world and a very weird job. So I kind of had this idea for, I only have 1 book out. I'm working on my 2nd one right now. Had this idea for a book. I know how to write a romance novel. I know how to do it pretty quickly because that's what I was paid to do. So worked on my own and wrote it in about 6 months, revised it, and then I had a very quick querying process. I was very, very fortunate. Anybody who knows about the querying and submission world knows that it is a rough place to be for a lot of people, and they will stay there for a very long time. I was very, very fortunate. I got my agent in about a month of querying, and we sold the book within 3 days of being on submission.
I think all that ghostwriting paid off.
It did. So I'm representing traditional publishing up here. My books are through Penguin.
And your release was just last month.
Yes. Yes.
Congratulations.
Like 3 weeks ago. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Woo! I spent a lot of time hiding in the shadows, but then when I stepped out of the shadows, it all happened very quickly.
And Bryn, your path is like wild. Like it's like they talk about kind of like the dream of what happens. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I am self-published as well. I had self-published, Which on Blackbird was my 8th book. So I had done some paranormal, essentially dark rom-coms. So my genre is more like dark rom-com. I'd done a couple of like serial killer romances. I self-published Butcher and Blackbird, and it kind of just exploded about 2 weeks after I self-published it. And I started getting all of these inquiries for foreign rights translations, basically like every country will have its own publishing house, and they want to do all the translations and distribution and stuff. So I was getting all of these inquiries, and people were asking like, who's your agent? And I'm like, I don't have an agent. And luckily, the Hungarian publisher, he recommended 2 names, and I reached out to one of them, and she got back to me within 30 minutes of reaching out to her on a Sunday.
She was like,
I would like to talk tomorrow. So we talked the next day, and I signed with her that day. We prepped everything for submission, kind of similar to you. Like, we went out on submission on a Thursday, and by Friday we had a first preemptive offer. So, which was in the UK. So yeah, it's been a whirlwind for
that
sure.
was that first class was last August, and then, yeah, so basically a year later, like, just amazing. It's really cool to see.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so, and then Carla?
So they're the hares and I'm the tortoise. I'm way slower. I'm a lot older too, obviously. But my journey was a lot slower, where I had been writing for years. I loved writing. I had written YA, I had written biblical fan fiction, all kinds of stuff. And I tried to get an agent. I had one for a while. I almost sold the book a couple times. And then 2020 hit, and I was laid off work temporarily, and I had time, and I was like, you know, this might be a good time to explore self-publishing. And people had told me, write 3 books in a series, get them out, get them written, and then look into it. So I wrote the Blackwood Cellar series because I couldn't travel. They were all set in places that I wanted to go, like Hawaii and up in Door County, and a Christmas one, because we couldn't do anything fun. And I wrote them all, and then in 2021 I pulled the trigger and I started my self-publishing journey. And then my next series was inspired because I used to be an archaeologist. So those are all based on my archaeology experiences. So it's been a fun journey. It's hard sometimes because I'm real small, not very visible. I'm terrible. I'm old enough that I'm like, TikTok, are you kidding me? Like, please don't video me ever. But I'm just trying.
I got bad news over there.
I'm gonna make a cute, fun video where my kids are not like, Mom, please. Like, yeah, cringe, Mom. So, but yeah, I'm just still going at it, and I'm having a great time.
Which is the most important. And I think a lot of authors, right around the time of the pandemic, they just were like, either it inspired them to start writing, or it kicked them into gear of like, what am I waiting for? And to take their career in their own hands. And yeah, so if you're interested in that process, there actually is a panel at 3 talking about self-publishing and the process of indie publishing, and then Carla and I will be on that as well. So yeah, so I'm also traditionally published. I kind of, I was, you know, in my mom phase, and the only, like, needed a mental escape, so started writing, fell into some writing groups, and you know, just like, NaNoWriMo is no more. We will not discuss NaNoWriMo anymore, but that's kind of what got me started too. And then kind of from that writing group, started entering contests and got an agent, and ta-da! No. Here I am. So we just meant a little bit, you know, Carla talking about writing contemporary romances that are, you know, kind of, we call it armchair tourism, where you travel the world. And each of us kind of we all write romance, but we all write a little bit different flavor of romance. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, kind of like what your subgenre is and your brand, and what kind of drew you to that particular type of romance. So let's start with Bryn, who definitely I think is a very defined, you know, type of romance.
Yeah, so it's very much dark romantic comedy. I love like old school horror movies. I love romance, obviously. A lot of what I had done in the previous books to that series, that Ruinous Love trilogy series, you know, when people would tag me in reviews, they would often say they loved the humor in it. So I just decided I was going to really lean into that humor aspect and kind of make it more central in the book. And I think I had done that in like the paranormal romance series. I just didn't realize I was doing it. It sounds weird to say when you write like 3 whole books and you're like, oh, now I realize years later, 2 years later, that, oh, this is what that was. But yeah, I just really leaned into the humor and went for it, and now it's kind of like, I feel like that's my wheelhouse, is like combining these things of like horror, romance, and comedy.
But it's, I mean, because it's great because it's like a strong brand. It's like people think of your books now, you like they know that that's what they're getting.
Right, yeah.
So-
Yeah, I think that's an important element for any author is like figuring out what your voice and your brand is and kind of like building on that.
100%. So Becca, so you're just got your first book out and having had to like take on the style of so many other authors as a ghostwriter, now you get to define your voice and your style. How would you describe it?
Very queer and very funny. Not to toot my own horn too much, but I am hilarious. God, I'm a riot, and I do like laugh out loud while reading my own books. And my editor did once want to like cut something from the book that I didn't want to cut, and so I made her tell me I'm funny, and then I said I would cut it. So yeah, funny and very, because I was copying other people for so long, my style is just very, very rooted in me. I write the way that I talk, and Penguin is channeling queer Emily Henry Chapel Roan vibes, which is convenient because I am just me, but it is fortunate that we are in such a market that me being just me, just funny and gay is enough. And that rules, yeah.
So I was telling Becca, I was reading her debut before the panel, and I have a 21-year-old daughter who is queer and is kind of in a small town and had just gone through her first breakup, and I was like, this is my kid's story. Like, this is a little bit weird me as the parent reading, like what could literally be her story. So, but I think, yeah, like you said, it like fits so well. She's also kind of salty about Chapel Roan because she was into her like before.
Me and your daughter went over.
So she's like, they're taking it from us. Carla.
So I like to write escape reads. So I love to travel. The two things I love the most are reading and traveling, and also writing. So once the pandemic ended, after I wrote these series of weddings, the first series are weddings, or destination weddings. The second series, because I used to be an archaeologist, I wanted to write about that world, but I wanted to write about it realistically. So I just apologize about there's no mummies, there's no exploding heads or Nazis or idols. It's real archaeology. The thing is, archaeologists, wow, like dig shenanigans are a thing. So I was like, I'm gonna go hard on this.
Dig.
Dig.
No, that's true.
Although,
I mean, you know.
There.
on the horse.
So yeah, I like mine are pretty light. They're pretty fun. There's some emotional stuff. There's a little bit of spice, but mostly they transport you to just a different place, like to Italy or to Turkey or to Door County, like places that you want to go and relax. You just take that book and you sit on a beach and you read it. When people tell me, "Oh, I read your book on the plane ride," I'm like, that is exactly what I wanted. So that is my vibe. It's just a fun escape.
Fun escape, perfect. Yeah. Yeah, so also I feel I like to think I'm hilarious as well. So yeah, I like to write funny. That's kind of my wheelhouse, is like funny, entertaining, escapist vibes as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like the novel Under the Bed, if any of us have one of those, you know, kind of when you're first starting to write and maybe it's not working or something about it, like you abandon it for whatever reason. Like my first book that I wrote was a paranormal romance, kind of a ghost whisperer meets X-Files story, which I love that book, but at the time, paranormal wasn't hot. It is again, so I might pull it out of the bed. But like, so that's my book Under the Bed, is that ghost romance. Do you have a book under the bed?
So Jen here, my friend, writing friend,
She was
would
laughing
know
right
that I spent years, before romantasy was a thing, on a book called The Fallen Princess. That was like 800 pages at one point. That is
So
a
epic fantasy.
giant epic with sort of parallel worlds to 16th century Persia and China and Ottoman Turkey. And it was like really epic, and I loved it so hard. I created maps. I had like a list of character names. I wrote history. Loved it so hard, but it was a weird hybrid. It was like fantasy and romance. And that wasn't a thing when I started it. Who knew? So that book is on a shelf, actually, in a binder.
That romantasy may need to come back out.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Give yourself, get a different publishing name and start doing more.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that's the book.
So, do you have anything, Heidi? writing on a? No.
Nah. It's so funny to hear you speak about, wow, I built the maps and the histories, and my book takes place in my hometown. Like, I sure was not inventing much.
You're definitely following the right, which you know.
Yes, and in fact, when I try to write what I don't know, it just ends up becoming what I know anyway. So I really want to write a gay cruise book, but so I'll do that someday. But it's none for me.
Okay.
I do. I have one that I was writing at the same time as I was writing Butcher and Blackbird, and then I just got really sucked into Rowan and Sloane. And I'm like, I have 75,000 words, I think, done in that one.
That's
so it's like super close to the end. Because a typical romance book is like 80, 85. And I'm curious to know if anybody will recognize this title, The Poison Pastry Bakery. It's like a why choose romance. Anyway, some people ask me about it because it is like there is a listing for it on Goodreads because I thought I was gonna like finish it at the same time.
So you even got it like roll.
Like it's there. I was gonna self-publish it, but I'm just like sitting on it basically, and I did send it to my agent. She's like, "Whoa, that's really spicy." I was like, "Yeah, I know. Well, it's a why choose. There are multiple people involved, right?"
You're getting some tea here, learning about this other like secret book that she's got in her back pocket.
Yeah, but it's like, think John Wick meets, spice.
That's just the high concept you need.
Pull it up from under your bed, please.
Yeah.
Sold.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like we will eventually do something with it, but right now like there's just other stuff to
Other
to
stuff
work
on your plate, for sure. That's it. I mean, it's kind of fun to have that in the background.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to discuss whether an HCA is required for a romance or not because it is the end. But they are for everyone. So romance is for everyone. The genre, I think, is, accessible to all. And the fact that you go through so many books are like, I'm not seeing the things I want to see, so I'm going to write what I want to see. I would like to talk a little bit about like why you think reading romance is important. I mean, to this day, we're still getting, I love to see this packed room of people who want to be here to talk about romance and read romance. But unfortunately, the stigma is often still there. It's like, oh, I don't read romance, and people will just walk on by or whatnot. So what do you think is important about reading romance?
I think everyone deserves a happy ending, and I love love, and I just like I like reading books that are like, dark or thrillers, but I love reading a book where I'm rooting for the characters and I'm so happy when they get together and it feels well-deserved. And for anybody who thinks romance is formulaic, I'm like, when you read a murder mystery, there's a dead body and you know it's going to get solved.
Yes.
When you watch a James Bond movie, is he going to live? Of course he's going to live.
I call this the meet cute concept. In every romance, you have a meet cute. In thriller and crimes, you have the meat corpse. in the heist movies, you have the meat con. Like you have the meet con.
Get a crew together.
All of these books have the genre fiction has this moment. So why we get the shit like refrigerator.
Yeah, and I'll admit that when I was ghostwriting romance too, I was super ashamed of it. And because I was 22 years old, I was fresh out of a Lutheran liberal arts college with a creative writing degree, and I was writing smut. I was so ashamed because I thought that I was supposed to be doing, writing poetry or, whatever. But it allowed me to connect with all the rom-coms that I watched growing up, and it was so important that when I would kind of say it quietly, then finding other people who did think it was cool and were like, wait, no, I read that, in a time where it wasn't as out loud as it is now. My big thing with romance is that I live with the delusion that everything works out for me. And I know people I've talked about the lucky girl syndrome and crap like that on TikTok, but just no, everything just plays out for me the way that it's supposed to. And I don't know, I've always thought that, and I think some of it is too much watching rom-com as a kid, that I'm like, well, yeah, it always ends really happily. Everything's gonna be fine in the end, and I know whatever like this discomfort is, it's gonna be resolved. And then I get confused in real life when things don't work that way, because in my head they're always supposed to work that way. That's how it goes. And I mean, obviously that was a huge thing as to why people started picking up romance during the height of the pandemic.
Well, right. If things suck in the real world, we can escape into where we know at the end it's going to be okay.
Yeah, and also like, I mean, ethical porn. We love ethical porn, and that rules. That's all. Okay, your turn.
It's a safe. No, I think it's a safe space to explore. Yeah, yeah, that's exactly. So.
Yeah, and I think to go with your comment about it being a safe space, like I'm much more in like the dark romance category, and I think it plays a very important role because a lot of people come to romance with trauma, and that is a safe place to explore that and to like navigate those experiences in an environment where you can set it aside, you can put that down. I'm very lucky that one of my close friends is Haley, H.D. Carlton, and I saw a really interesting podcast about her book, which many people know that are readers of the genre, Haunting Adeline, and Hunting Adeline is the second one. And in this podcast, this woman was talking about how she was stalked in real life for quite a long time, and it was very terrifying. Like, this person was very dangerous. He was after her for quite a while, and it was very traumatic. And then she read Haunting Adeline, and after that she realized that when she heard the word stalker, she thought of Zayd. She didn't think of her stalker anymore. So it had reframed her entire experience because she could play it out to the end of like, what would happen if it was actually this person is you know, safe, or like what is the happy ending? Like, this is a whole different experience from her real life experience. And I think that's like such a valuable thing that you can get from dark romance in particular, and any romance really. I think romance is really, you know, people want to feel like they can be loved no matter how dark or how damaged or you know, how difficult their life is, and romance kind of gives you that opportunity. But yeah, dark romance in particular for me, I think can be such a healing experience for a lot of readers.
That was an excellent example, like, especially because like there is that question of like, well, why would you read that? But like again, because it's a safe place to explore that and how they, so kind of like changing the narrative for them, their own narrative. So that's, yeah, and I think at the core of all romance, regardless of the subgenre, you know, the core of the human need to love and be loved.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, we're going to go into some fun stuff here, romantic stuff. So you already mentioned a scene that you said that was hilarious that your editor wanted to take out. So that kind of covers two questions. I wanted to ask about a darling that you've had to cut, and or a scene that you just thought was hilarious that had you laughing or crying out loud.
I've had to cut a lot of like little one-off lines that I think are really funny. The big thing that was me with the editor that she had to tell me I was funny in order to make me cut it, is that there's only one spicy scene in my first book, reason being that it takes place in my hometown and my teachers are gonna read it, and you know, it feels weird. But I was getting a little bit too, I had this great line about two sweaty gingerbread men lying in bed like afterwards, and my editor was like, hey, you gave them like a little bit of spice. I need you to not like immediately go into like talking about fluids on the bed. And I was like, but it's realistic, that means it was good. And she was like, you need to back that off. So that's a lot of the stuff that was cut for me, was not like a particular scene, but just like these little, like either gross details or funny details where it's like, okay, back up, but you have to, there's a certain amount of spice that people are expecting and a certain amount of comedy, and you can't be gross and then just a little bit of spicy, I guess. So not really a darling, but that one line, the sweaty gingerbread man, I thought it was really good. And it's a holiday bound book, are you kidding me? Like,
You don't get it. Carla, how about you?
So I'm trying to think, since I do a lot of my own editing, I will say in the book I have coming out, which is called Santa Maybe, I made a joke about like, sort of a sexy Santa, and it got a little bit sleazy, and a couple of my beta readers were like, don't overdo it with the sleazy Santa thing, like, and I'm like,
It's like a whole sub.
I told her that. She's like, but don't equate it with like a daddy king. Santa separate, Santa. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'll tone it down a little bit. Because I didn't want to like, because that's not the kind of romance I write.
Sitting on
But,
his lap.
well, that's the thing, there's a scene later where he's at a shelter and he's asking kids to sit on his lap, and she's like, take that out and just say, because there is a lap sitting scene in the spicy stuff. So I'm like, you're right, I have to make sure there's a boundary and keep the nice Santa nice and the sexy Santa separate. So.
Good to know.
Ooh, after that. Visions and candy cane. I'm really stubborn, so like with the editors, I think they're almost scared to like, it's a nice to have if you want to cut it. I'm like, I'm not gonna cut that. So there's not really anything that, now that I've switched over from, you know, self-published to trad, there's really nothing that I've been forced to cut, which is good. But I think like favorite scenes, because that was part of your question.
Yeah,
it's usually something that's really gross. Like the mummy scene in If You've Read Butcher and Blackbird, that's one of my favorites. I never thought that the ice cream was going to be such a big deal, but everybody's like, ice cream. I'm like, but the mummy. Like the finger in the jar. There's like one in Silent Sparrow coming out that I really love. Which is like, I guess, the first time we see Rose kill somebody and it goes a little awry. She's not very good at being a serial killer, which I really love about her. And it doesn't really go to plan, so she's got to kind of like adjust. Yeah, things like that I find really fun. But I've been fortunate that when they've said like, do you want to cut this little bit? And I'm like, no. Okay.
I think having had so many books of your own under your belt first, you've gotten used to that, and you're at a place coming into the traditional space where you have a little more gravitas, we might say, where you can be like, no, I'm keeping it. They're like, okay.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit of having been self-published like first is that, you know, you learn very quickly that it's not just about the writing, it's also about the business of doing it, right? So you get acquainted by necessity with like the marketing and different aspects of it. So I think when you go into then that space of traditionally published, I don't know if you feel the same, but like, and probably as like a ghostwriter having seen people go through it and then go through it, you're more willing to advocate for yourself, and that definitely plays through in the editing phase as well, where you're like, I'm not going to do that. Well, guess you're not going to do that.
Okay, so we're going to, a couple more things, and then we're going to switch over to questions. We're going to play the numbers game really fast. So I would like you to tell us one thing you struggle with when drafting a book. Like for me, I struggle with pacing. Like I struggle with, you know, keeping things going at the right kind of pace. What would you say is something you struggle with?
All of it. I hate it. I just hate it. I call it my vomit draft because I just write as fast as I can. I don't put dialogue tags. I don't put description. I'm always like, add description, add, you know, spacing.
Thank you, Castle.
Yeah, and I just put it, and I just try to get it out there because I love revising, but drafting is just, it's all hard. It's all like, come on,
So
sit
just
there
the
and write
drafting
those
process.
words. That first ugly draft.
Okay.
It's so tough.
What would you say?
I am the same, and that's honestly so reassuring to hear. Especially as somebody who was hired to just essentially draft in the beginning, just write, not revise. And most of my friends who are writers love drafting and hate revising. And I don't know if anybody reads Piper CJ. She's a really good friend of mine. And she could draft all day long, and she can write so many words, and that's, if I could only revise, I would do that.
So I'm like a hardcore pantser. So I will have a moment during the drafting inevitably where it's like existential panic. Like, why do I do it like this? And like, why can't I plot and outline things? Because now I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I inevitably have a moment in every draft where I like have this dread and panic, and then it usually like I'll figure it out. But thank God. But yeah, there's like this moment of ultimate like panic that it really sucks.
You get that too.
Yeah, I do.
Really cool. I had that like 3 days ago. That was awesome. And I do outline, and I'm still like, this isn't where I thought.
No, it never goes away.
So those are one, so there are two. So two favorite things to write. So like I love to write banter and boning.
So I love banter and I love writing the black moment. I get so fired up when I'm writing that big argument, crisis, breakdown scene. I'm like just on fire. I love writing that. I don't know why. I mean,
And I think
just love
I
it.
think like dark moments are still like essential to storytelling, but we're in like this interesting phase of what's popular and a lot of like no dark moment kind of requests. And so I think how that dark moment gets played out and how we come back from it, like it takes extra finesse.
It's not, mine are never like super dark, but there's still like a moment when there's a big blowout or a fight or something happening where it's.
They have to
like,
earn
is
the
it gonna work?
HEA.
Yes, so I love that though. I get so excited for it.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm also going to say banter. Wow, hello. And sticking with the themes of these, best friends. Because something that's really, really important and like really integral to my books is that the best friendships are treated as a romance of their own.
Yes.
That was one of my biggest hang-ups when I was ghostwriting, is I was so sick of these freaking best friend characters who showed up just to advance the plot of the main character. I hated it. I'm like, what is their story? What is their story? And also my relationships with my friends, I feel, are as interesting, if not more interesting than romantic relationships. So
Oh no, I'm high-fiving you because I feel like it's a full circle character, like fully developed, like those friendships are as integral and happy to a HEA as the romantic one. So yeah, Bryn.
Yeah, I think the boning and they're like straightforward scenes to write in many ways, I feel like, because you've got less noise. Like you don't have to think about what happened 6 chapters ago and so said this. Like that's not happening right now. And blood and gore. I mean, like
let's
the
go to
blood
2 Bs
gore.
as well, alright.
Yeah, sticking with the B theme. So I always love one of the murder scenes. Yeah, those are fun.
This actually kind of takes us back to a separate question that I'll ask this instead of the 3 things, so I'll ask this instead. One of the strangest, weirdest things you may have researched for a book. It's like I think I've taken like Google, don't come after me, don't judge me, I'm a writer.
Yeah, that's a long.
I'm sure we could have like a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
but let's think of one. Let's think of
like,
one.
I'm definitely on a watch list, 100%. I think the one that really sticks out in my mind is in Leather and Lark. I'm gonna maybe give away a little spoiler, so plug your ears if you want. But she puts a body in it. She makes a body into a resin table. And I was trying to research, like, okay, how deep does the table need to go? Would it be a kitchen table or not? Or would it be like a coffee table?
So they're like this inside the table?
And I was like researching, like Googling, and I got so frustrated. And it's like depth of a body. Supine body depth, body chest. Height, like I couldn't find the right.
Yeah, you're definitely on a
but it's like some FBI agent must have been like, "What the hell is she doing today?" It's like, there's a body in there somewhere, and it's going to be in a table. Yeah.
I can't talk about the super weird ones because the super weird ones were not my book.
Okay.
Which is a bummer because they're really funny. I get a lot of weird ads. But for my own book, and this isn't really weird or funny, but it's also affecting my ads a lot, is that the current book has a community college transfer student coming into a university, which is not something that I did. And boy, there's so many logistics that go with making your character have a certain major, and what credits, what classes are they, and those stupid details that I'm like, why did I spend 4 hours researching this when it's such a minor thing in the book? But U of I really thinks that I'm transferring there. They're spending a lot of ad money on me, and it is useless. I am almost 30 and not looking to get my bachelor's degree there.
It's funny because I don't get ads for ice cream and resin.
Apparently you don't get ads for like body resin tables.
I'm
That's
like waiting for Ben
Yeah,
and Jerry
yes.
to contact me and nothing.
That would be a fun
Collaborate.
situation. Then we'll manifest that. That's going to happen. Carla, how about you?
So when I was researching Blue Hawaiian, which takes place, and it's a tropical wedding in Maui, and I wanted to like find out like how it would be to throw a tropical wedding. So I went on these like hotel sites and like researched everything and like the menus, and I got an email from one of them like, we're sorry, we're not doing any weddings this year. It's like March 2020. They're like, we are closed. There are no weddings happening this year, so please, like, take us off your list. And I was like, it's just research. But, I mean, it wasn't that funny, but it was just the idea that they really thought that I was interested in
I mean,
having a wedding.
it's fair of them to try and, help you out there and let you know that this was not going to happen. So I actually did get ads for the one I was researching. So my most recent rom-com, the hero, his family owns a funeral home, and I was researching green burial methods like the composting bodies and things like that, which is a fascinating side of business, but I started getting ads for, composting your loved ones. Yeah.
You can combine them and be like funeral director school.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hand it over to Sam for questions.
Perfect. All right, I got some good ones, and now I warn you, I wasn't in this room the whole time, so if any of these don't make sense, let me know, but might have to suss out who some of these were directed at. So there was a lot about biblical fan fiction. Tell me more about. I got like 2 or 3 messages about biblical fan fiction. You can go more into that.
Like a little niche now.
If anyone is Catholic or Christian, I apologize. But so when I was 15, I was obsessed with Jesus Christ Superstar, like obsessed. I was a theater nerd, and I was like, I love Mary Magdalene. It's like, what if? It's a little bit. So there's Jacob Chire and Mary Maddox, and they get together on this biblical mission, but no crucifixions ensue.
Was there a horse? Was there a horse?
Where's the horse? Is it on a horse?
I called it I Mary, and it was written in diary form because I was 15. And at the time, this is like in the 80s, so I just typed it in high school so that I could type it up and send it to a publisher. I'm taking secretarial typing, which is what it was called, and I have it still in a box, and it's terrible. Like, it's so bad. But I was so
This is
obsessed
something
with
you need to release like in your newsletter.
Resurrected.
Anyway.
Jesus smoke. That rules.
Amazing. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys to each answer this one rapid fire. Give us your favorite book boyfriend and a quick why. I'll give you 20 seconds to talk. No, not 20.
I'm ready.
Okay, go.
And I couldn't even tell you his name because yikes. But the love interest in Funny Story by Emily Henry is the first man Emily Henry has ever written that I've been attracted to because I am only attracted to men if they are community-oriented stoners.
Perfect.
Wow. Well, I have Emily Henry too. I have Book Lovers, where he's a sort of grouchy editor, because I just thought that was so hot, and I love the thing about the Bigfoot porn. If you've read it, I love it.
Okay.
I would say maybe, this is really hard. Rapid fire. Under pressure. Lead him from Death's Obsession. Yeah, because he's deaf.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite, Karen Marie Monning, she writes these Highlander romances. My favorite is Dagus or Dagus, depending on who you want to ask how to pronounce it. So he's a druid who has like the souls of 13 evil druids like trapped in his body. And the only way he can kind of like control that is by having lots of sex.
It's always the case.
And
How many times have I heard that? You know?
I got it to a bad guy. Keep you from going evil.
Okay, and then another one we're gonna do kind of rapid fire. What's one thing, so the panel is 10 things I love about love. What's one thing you hate? Either, I hate to say hate about love, that's awful. But like, what's maybe one thing you don't love about writing romance novels? What's the challenging? What's the part that you dread every time? Something like that.
This is like a two-way street because everyone complains about miscommunication in romance, but I feel like miscommunication is the realest thing of all. Like if you think about, I've been married now over 20 years and miscommunication is still like a thing. So I feel like that's a love-hate for me because I feel like it's essential to storytelling, but readers really, you know, I get it, I get why it's frustrating, but also like it's real.
But life is frustrating. Okay.
I would say when I'm reading an enemies to lovers and there's a prank war and it's affecting people's businesses, and sometimes I just don't like that idea. I'm like, that would really be awful in real life if someone's messing with stuff. So that's kind of the one, if I start reading it, I get to, I'm like, usually it's one that I don't end up finishing.
Okay. All right.
And this isn't, I am gonna flex, because you did a little bit, you were like, oh, I will talk about a trope that I don't like.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Is that I don't like any like bully romance. Everyone should be really nice to me all the time. I think it's really hot when people are nice to me. So I don't like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go along the same lines. So, like, I just won't really write anything I don't love to write. But in terms of like reading it, probably the whole like surprise accidental pregnancy. Like I remember vividly being pregnant, and there was no fun to be had in that. So like I don't really want to like relive that in a book. And that, and I think your comment earlier about like the best friend thing, that's another huge one for me. It's like I don't like it when the women in books like, just have an acrimonious relationship for no reason. It's like no, it's just horrible. Like why? Yeah, so I don't like it when there's like really fractured female relationships for no reason other than to just like make the main character look even better.
I don't like how they vilify the ex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, you guys ended up answering a lot of the questions we already had, so that's going to be a wrap on that. Can we give a big round of our applause?